think he likes going down there, not me. I will never go down there. Stories are like telling
So if you want to go ahead and run the meeting from there, I'll listen in.
Okay.
You're ready to go ahead.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's township meeting. This is our workshop, December 6, 2023. Could I ask everyone to stand up and pledge allegiance to the flag?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Of course, this meeting is being broadcast on Zoom, and Scott Dilson is in the back filming the meeting and live streaming it. Sorry, I'm turning off video. Sounds like Next, we have open forum. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed something pretty important here. I'd like to say that I think tonight's event went pretty well, and it started really sort of on a whim at the end of our last regular township meeting. One of our longtime residents and resident families in Sullivan Ridges, Deb comes to the meeting every month and mentioned her dad's love of Christmas, and then I think Kevin just said, we should have a tree lighting, and then said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Like good things that came together nice and everybody participated. And I believe that tonight's event went off well, and I thank everybody involved for all their participation. And thank you, Deb, for getting in there and creating the spark that created a good idea. And I'm glad that everybody was able to come together and bring it to fruition.
And as a side note, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Deb wanted to pay for the lights. Christy jumped the gun and paid for them herself out of the township fund. So we typically don't accept reimbursements for township purchases. So Deb generously donated to the food bank in lieu of providing us the cost of the lights. And I think, quite honestly, that is a amazing thing to do because there is a ton of people in need. So again,
Well, it's our thanks. But you know what, I think this light, I would like to say this tree light, you did an awesome job. Should be started in memory and honor of all of those like my dad in his era, in that generation that loved this township, were lifetime residents of this township, and they loved this land. And they left it to us to, proceed with it. And we had a lot of great people. A lot of us are still children of those who were lifelong residents of this town, and it means a lot to me, as I've always all of them.
And the lights, just like your dad liked the lights, wherever you
Oh,
put lights,
right,
you
yes.
put lights.
And many of them did. Tracy, you know that. So thank you for what you
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we go to open forum. And this is in regard to anything that's on the agenda. Does anyone on this side of the room have anything they'd like to say?
Is it okay to talk about the budget right now, or is that later?
well, that's
That's what's on the agenda, yeah, sure.
Okay, so I was reviewing the 2024 budget. I noticed that this year's budget is considerably shorter than budgets in the past, only 6 pages versus 19 pages in 2023, 18 pages in 2022. Is that accurate? Am I looking at the right budget?
So what was provided to you is a summary of all of the budget, so it's not line for line, but it's portion by portion. So again, it is still a full budget, it's just a summary of each of the individual sections of the budget.
Is there a reason why you have taken out the detail before you publish it?
Is this something that, it's a summary because we posted it in the newspaper, posting that full budget would have cost us probably over $1,000, so
Okay,
we
so
posted it that
you
way.
just did it because of the cost.
Yes, ma'am.
And is there a way to see the line, because in looking at this, it's really hard to study this without having the details.
So once it's approved, then the full budget will be posted on the website.
Right, but once it's approved, it's too late to ask questions, right?
You can ask questions at any time. The board, so this started in September. So the line by line was discussed at various meetings, Paul Jansen, myself.
Yeah, I was here.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so all that budget discussions, that's where it started to materialize. And the questions were asked and answered. And from that initial budget meeting, tiny, minute changes were made. Now again, a budget is just a framework, right? It is not set in stone. The Commonwealth ensures that the township operates within its means. And again, this is making sure that by law, we have to pass something that does not unduly provide a deficit. So again, we show what we believe we're going to make and what we believe we're going to expend. This is by no means set in stone because we don't know what we're going to take in next year.
No, I understand totally how budget works. I do budgets.
Okay,
I'm just
so
saying,
again, it's just.
as a resident,
Mhm.
looking at this budget is like, it's kind of like, okay, so you have a line item here for administrative, $371,000. What is that?
It's for all the costs of conducting the administrative side of the.
I know, but why wouldn't you break that down so that we can see what's going into that? I mean, last year, you can see, I mean, that's salaries, right? That's your salary.
It's more than just salaries.
Right, I understand, and I wish you would be more transparent in showing the details of what's going on. I mean, how are we supposed to make comments on that? I mean, and in the past, that's not how it was, and I think it's really a lack of transparency to just lump all this stuff together into 6 pages and taking away all that itemization. I don't think it's fair. I would love to see the breakdown so that I could actually compare it. So that administrative line, the budget last year was $258,000. This year's $371,000. How can I look at that and say, why did it increase? I mean, isn't that what we're supposed to do, is make comments on the budget before it's passed? That's our
Correct,
job.
you're supposed to make comments to the board of supervisors that they can elect to utilize or not utilize and see.
Yeah, how can we comment on that when we don't know what's being put into that?
Well, we can just,
You can release anything you want. It's similar to last year's budget, and again, the change was just because we advertised the full budget, which we don't. We don't have to put it in the paper, but we elect to do the summary into the paper. So that was what was.
Okay, well, I just think personally that you should put out the detailed budget as opposed to the summary, because the summary is not helpful. It's really hard to know what I'm looking at here. Also, last year's budget included 3 columns. It had a projected year end, it had a 2022 budget, and a 2023 budget. Again, making it really helpful to look at and compare and contrast from one year to the other. Same thing with public works. The 2024 budget is $562,000. Last year was $419,000. Can you tell me why it has increased?
We added a full-time member and we're doing more road work this year.
Okay, I mean, I'd love to see salaries, I mean, I look at West Brandywine's budget, it is so much more detailed. The breakdown is just, it's very transparent, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, we should be able to give more details for.
Whatever the board wishes to provide, we can do.
And those salaries are set by resolution by the board in January, so you'll get to see what everybody wants.
Could we sort of print out a detailed version? That's just a matter of.
Christie can post it tomorrow morning.
Yeah, and then you can see the line by line detail. figure
Yeah, I
out
think
what
it-
the difference is.
I think it's helpful to see that. And then can you, on the budget under 490, other financing issues or uses, the budget for 2024 is $460,000. Can you tell me what that is for?
Sure, that's transfers to other township funds.
Okay.
So 120 goes to the capital reserve funds, township-wide to pay for future vehicle purchases, depreciation. $60,000 goes to the capital reserve fund to start pre-funding the campus repairs that are going to start happening due to the age of the campus. $60,000 goes to a transfer to the rec funds that we started last year to ensure that if maintenance needs to be done, it comes from out of there. And $120,000 comes to the EMS funds, as that was some of our ARPA money that had been provided to them that the ambulance has not taken over the course of the last 2 years, so now we're just finally putting it into their accounts, so when they need it, it's already there. So that $460,000 is getting transferred within the town. It's not actually an expenditure, but we have to show it as an expense. It's coming out of general funds and being claimed as revenue into capital reserve fund rec and EMS.
Okay. That's all I have now. Thank you.
If I could say on that public works, so there were projects that were slated for 2023, not completed, it'll be done in 2024. So that expense was going to be incurred in 2024, and that's reflected in this budget, correct?
Correct, and a lot of times, we had put $200,000 into stormwater management projects. We can elect to spend all $200,000, or we can elect to, I think this year we spent under $60,000. But by showing what the maximum amount is that we could expend, that dictates how much we can spend elsewhere. So because we show all these expenses, it doesn't mean that the township is going to do all that, but that helps show a balanced budget. To show that if we went to the extreme of what we could do with our money, that we still have a healthy fund balance. So just because we have it, so in land preservation, every single year, we show $400,000 of land acquisition expenses. We used, I don't know, $35,000 this year. The reason why we show $400,000 is to prove to the township, to the Board of Supervisors, that should we use that full allotment of $400,000, the income still is growing in that fund, and that we can continue to have a robust land preservation program. Doesn't mean because we don't use it, we should wipe it out. That's there as a placeholder in case we get a large amount of requests to come in. This year we have 4 applications. As of today, we have not gotten anything from the Chester County Land Preservation Committee, whether they recommend it. So sometime in next year, they're going to probably come back to us and come back in January and February and say it's $300,000. Well, we've already pre-budgeted that that's not going to do that.
Yeah,
So a lot of times we over budget just to show that we're still operating within our means.
And I think that's where that projected year-end column is helpful too, so that we can actually see.
And again, that's, so you can see that at the very top line of the budget. It shows you what the proposed budget will be, fund balance at the beginning of the year, top of the page.
Yeah.
Okay, it
But
shows
not
you what we
account by
expect as
account.
revenue, and it shows you at the end of the year, if we do all the expenses as noted, that at the end of 2024 in our general fund, we will still have $3,617,000.
I get what you're saying, but I'm saying it's helpful to see that account by account, which was part of the budget
Mhm.
last year.
Okay.
In reviewing it, I can't look at this and and know if that seems right or not, without seeing where you are, what was projected, and what the budget is slanted.
And I just wanted to add to, so a few years ago, when the residents would look at the website, there would be a executive summary, not just a compressed compilation of the accounts. For instance, 400 would be on the administrative, and what we're showing now is a full line and not a broken down line entry there. But what we would have in that summary, the executive summary, you would start off by saying the general fund is balanced at $1.2 million, whatever that amount might be. Then we would break it out and say that there's no tax increase projected for the upcoming budget year. So that's what information is missing. It's somewhat hard to take last year's budget compared to this year's budget, because there are a lot of things that are changing. Like the ARPA funds are no longer coming in and are now being dispersed. So those numbers skew a lot of the accounts. And that type of explanation written out would be helpful rather than just putting those numbers out. That's my suggestion. And so to the board members, your thoughts on that?
To be honest, I think that if the general public wants to look at the budget and, make sure that everything is correctly done, it is,
I assume
the
that
budget is,
that
the
would
budget
be
is
the
hard.
case. Yes, that's correct.
To make it easier to look at it and understand it would be helpful.
Yeah, so when you look at it, you say, overall, there's 5 accounts, or 6 accounts, whatever we're up to at this point. The first one being the general account, which is the overall spending for the township. Then there's dedicated funds for specific uses such as land preservation. That makes it helpful for people who may be looking at it for the first time. So, and it would just make it much easier when we are presented with the final budget for approval.
I think, maybe next year we can make it a goal to make our budget more user-friendly, let's say. More special. Yeah, show more detail, make it more user-friendly,
The details are there, it's just not understanding what those details are. That's, I think, what's being called out.
So I
heard directly from the person that was just speaking, I didn't catch the name. But to the point that we did have on the website a few years ago, where we would break it out into a written document that would present the budget, and it would say, the general fund is set up, is balanced, etc., whatever the cost would be. And if there was a request for tax increase, which we didn't have for well over 10 years, that would also be stated.
I remember reading the budget one time and it sort of told the story.
So it's a performance-based budget is what you're talking about. Upper Euclid Township does that. I had recommended that. Now, that's going to be a little bit more of staff involvement the very first year, because it'll break down all of the sub-portions of the budget and explain generally what those funds are going to try to accomplish.
Yeah.
So that would make even just our Excel document that is, 23 pages, we would probably put it out into a 60-page, 100-page document. And again, it's the initial setup. Again, the performance base typically doesn't change. So once you get that formatted for the first year, it's pretty easy then just to follow up. And again, if a certain line item or portion of the budget, the priorities change to some new projects, then we just adjust a single line. And it's materially not that much more work. It's just going to be a little bit more of a project to start earlier on to get that performance-based framework in.
If I did, just if you recall, when Tony was doing the budget, and she had just one staff member, so we authorized her additional funding to bring in additional help during the budget months. She had additional work to do in August and September, so that was how we accommodated that. So if there's additional staffing needed, we can accommodate that way. And there are some services out there, some agencies that have qualified people that can assist us. We've already found that out.
What I was gonna say is, I don't remember that, John, specifically, but is that something that we can do for 2024, have a performance-based budget, and then be mindful of the advertising cost of the budget, just give them sort of summary?
So for 2025, because 2024, we're.
All right, I'm sorry, yes.
So for next year, we can do a 2025 budget, and in lieu of actually putting the summary into the advertisement, we can just indicate in the newspaper that's available for inspection on the website and in person, and then that way we can have more of that proposed document as it appears through its stages. And once we start talking about it in September, we can continue to have that updated as the board works through the budget next year, and we can have that framework ready for next year.
So we could do a performance-based budget.
For the 2025 budget.
For
absolutely.
2025.
Yeah. Again, it's just going to be a little bit more.
The question as far as performance-based, what would distinguish that between what we're currently doing, performance-based? I just wanted to be clear on that.
Sure, so the performance base would break down general fund revenue, and it would break down the purpose of real estate tax, and what that is used for. It would also break down the expenditures for licensing and permits, and kind of explain that purpose of that income and then expenses to ensure as people come and apply for permits, that the proper inspections are done, and that they meet all the standards for uniform construction code, and that by having those revenues and expenses ensures that anything that's going to be built within the township meets all of the code requirements. As it would relate to public works, kind of explaining the purpose of what public works does and what the taxes and the expenses go in the hope of accomplishment. So the section in the general fund that relates to park maintenance, it would show that clearly those funds are used to repair such small items as the dugouts, holes in fencing, spray to remediate the weeds, which then cause a less issue of, ticks. So it would just break it down in high levels so someone can look at 409,900 building maintenance and understand what that $31,000 in expenses typically tries to accomplish.
Tracy, the budget with me explain
It is. It's definitions within the budget.
Well, we do have availability to a lot of those definitions. When you go online, the state has those guidelines. And what we're looking specifically to say, what is the delta between last year's numbers and this year's numbers within those specific accounts? And also, just a reminder, Tracy, what we did is we did give Tony a discretionary use of $2,000. So she wouldn't have to wait, put in a request to the board, wait until the month of the meeting to get the approval. She would have $2,000 available, where she could call up, get somebody in the next day if needed. So that was something that we felt was useful in helping her get her job done.
This is last year, here's 430. And then it brings it down into how
Oh, sure.
it is happening. This year, all we're getting is just 430 and
Oh.
So we're going to put up what you're asking up tomorrow morning.
yeah, that exists.
Yeah, it's going to go up
Not asking
tomorrow.
for it exists. We-
Yes.
Yeah, I think
It's
it's
going
just.
to go up tomorrow morning.
To us.
Yeah, it'll go,
Yeah, so
the
that's
board just said they're going to
all.
publish it tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
I mean, you can get the detail tomorrow, and then we work on having a performance-based budget
For 2025.
for 2025.
Yes, ma'am.
Start on that. And anyone on this side, same side as Aaron, that wants to have anything else? No? Valerie?
I believe you guys got the email where I had some comments that I'll read right now, but I agree, Aaron, it's really, really hard to understand what was on there. So I actually had taken screenshots when Paul Jansen was here showing the budget rollout. And what's confusing to me is that the budget rollout numbers for 2024 are very different than what was listed online for the 2024 budget review. And I sent you the Excel spreadsheet. Probably half of the numbers are different. I highlighted them in yellow compared to what Paul Jansen showed. So I don't know why they would change so much. And some of them, it looks like there was just a switch of numbers. So I don't know if they were mistakes or not. But assuming that the dollar amounts on the 2024 budget that were published on the township website are correct, it looked to me like we are in a deficit of $588,197 for the general fund, correct?
No.
That there's a carryover from last year, right? From this year.
So that number you're quoting is revenue versus expenses.
Okay.
You're not taking into account fund balance. So if you look to the very top of that document that you're referring to, again, the very first number says, in January 1st, 2024, you should have about $4.2 million in the budget. Again, this is just based upon
And
what
so
we're going to expend for the rest of the
carryover.
year. We haven't expended December's yet, so we don't know what that's going to be. So, again, when we talk about general fund revenues, we are very conservative. So we're going to undershoot what we believe our revenues are going to be. We're going to take in a hypothetical $3 million. We're actually going to tell the board we're going to probably take in 2.5. Because that drives, revenue drives what we can expend. So actual budget plus reserves at the beginning of next year will be about $6.6 million in the general fund. Again, this is at the top of that proposed budget that everyone is referring to tonight. So we're showing expenditures around $3 million. So the fund balance, which is, again, this is what we're talking about with the general fund. At the end of next year, should everything go according to plan, low revenue, high expenses, they will have $3.6 million in the general fund as of December 2024. That is not a deficit. Now, if you're just talking about revenue versus expenses, you're talking that $580,000 that you're seeing at the bottom. Again, understanding that $460,000 of that, that's under other financing uses, is this funds being transferred out of the general fund in the capital reserve, rec fund, and the EMS. So those aren't necessarily expenditures. Those townships might not be writing checks and sending that money out. We're just shifting where that money sits. So it's not, so $460,000, it's an expense. We're taking it out of the general fund, but we're putting it into other township funds. So it's revenue in those other funds. So the overall fund balance within the township, if you look at all of the funds, those numbers are still the same. But on paper, you're looking at a $588,000 deficit. $460,000 of that is just being transferred to other funds, not slated for expenditures. So if you want to look at this, realistically, we're looking at a deficit of about $120,000. If our revenues are way short and all of our expenditures are at the high level of what we're estimating.
So from what I can tell from my screenshots, just to answer your question, Aaron, administrative is up $113,000 roughly. General government administration is up $69,000 roughly. IT networking is up $9,000. Code enforcement, which makes sense with all the building, is up $43,000. Public works, payroll, and benefits is up $142,000. Maintenance to roads and bridges is up $100,000. And then you have the other financing uses. So it does help if you have those line items to see how things have changed over the past year.
And also, just if you don't mind answering those questions, when we talk about this in September, we are working with the previous month's year-to-date. It's very hard to tell 8 months into a year where we're going to land at the end of the year. So every month that goes by, we actually see our revenues and expenses. That is going to change what you are seeing in the budget.
So is that why Paul's numbers were different than what is in the final?
We are absolutely just guessing at September where we're going to land at the end of the year. So some of the budget numbers for our repairs, we had a backhoe that engine seized, and it was a $35,000 replacement. We didn't have that expected. The HVAC system had to be replaced this year. On the administrative side, we didn't budget for a failure, but that's $25,000. So as those costs come in, that's going to change what we're expending this year. We didn't think we were going to expend it. We didn't have any idea that an engine was going to have a catastrophic failure, or our HVAC system was going to go out, but those things happen. So as it looks like it's going to be, we're looking again at the end of December, and we showed a $240,000 deficit for 2023. It looks like at the end of the year, we're going to have revenue in the general funds exceed expenses by about $250,000. So we're going to come in $250,000 above what we think we were going to pay.
So the other question I had for you, when I looked at the detail from Paul Jansen's budget projection, it looked as though the only thing that was budgeted in there was a $250,000 expenditure for Parks and Rec. Does that mean that the repairs for Humboldt Park aren't? It's not clear as to what that $250,000 is. The only thing I can assume is it's for the skate park, because that was the cost of the skate park.
Correct, the $250 is the skate park, and that reimbursement $125 is half of the $250, because we have a $250,000 reimbursable DCNR grant. So if you only spend $250, you only get $125. So again, we're making an assumption based upon cost estimates that park is going to cost us $250,000, and whatever that number is, half of it's going to be reimbursed by DCNR. But again, these are just estimates.
So does that mean, though, that the repairs to Humboldt Park aren't happening? Because I didn't see that on, as a line.
So there's a $60,000 budget to repair items at the park. That's that, part of that transfer
So that's all.
that's part of that. So there's a $60,000 last year and $60,000 this year that go into the rec funds that should they want to undertake something. Now, if you're talking about the basketball and tennis courts resurfacing, Park and Rec recommended that we apply for another DCNR grant. So that $330,000 expense, the board has elected to push off till 2025, and I'm meeting with a DCNR rep next week to see if we can start applying for another grant. So those large repairs have been decided on the board to wait to see if we can get some funding.
Yeah,
But again, as that $120,000 now, $60,000 last year and $60,000 this year, again, if we need to repair some type of structure there that costs $50,000 that we didn't expect, or Don says, hey, I have time, let's do this, there's already $120,000 already in that fund just for upkeep. And then Don would say, hey, Warren, I want to replace the pavilion, it's $25,000, the money is still there, it would go in front of the board to say, do you want to spend this amount on repairs? Hopefully, does that?
Yeah.
And again, unfortunately, the township budget, it's complicated because again, we're showing what we think expenditures are going to be, and then we add 20%, just to make sure that when we pass a budget, the board knows that if things go awry on expenditures and for some reason we have a drop off of revenue, we can still operate and not put the township in dire consequences.
I had also asked in my email just for a better description of some line items. If you guys could, just respond to that email, that would be helpful as well. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Valerie. Anyone else on the left? Susan?
Good evening, Susan Jones, Kidler Road. Thank you for explaining some of the things. And just a question, you said, so right now you're looking at a proposed deficit for 2024 about 120,000. You mentioned that.
Revenue versus expenses, not looking at fund balance.
Okay.
So the general fund is going to have $4 million added. Next year, with the revenue that we expect, we're going to have over $6 million. And we believe that we're going to spend around $3 million.
Okay.
So again, balanced budget means that townships generally cannot have a negative balance.
Correct.
We cannot run out of funds.
Right.
Throughout all of the funds within the township, restricted and unrestricted, which means land preservation, mill if everything goes awry, and yes, from what we take in to what we expend in 2024 could show $120,000 deficit on paper. Now again, this is because we had $100,000 out of our general fund this year to do a road project, which we have elected to not do. We're gonna do in 2024, but instead of using the $100,000, we're gonna use the $100,000 we had for last year and $100,000 for next year, so it's actually $200,000 because we need to do twice the distance.
So,
Okay, so it looks like we're spending twice as much, which is true, it's just we spent none of that this year.
right, so it was just transferred up.
But we can't show that as a carry forward. Anything we don't spend this year, and again, it just stays in the fund balance.
Right. Oh, I understand that.
Okay?
So are you then anticipating, quote unquote, a balanced budget?
No, I'm anticipating that we're gonna have much more revenue than expense.
So do you anticipate no tax increase then?
There is no tax increase this year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anyone else here on the left-hand side? Do you have a question then? I thought you had your hand up, no? No, okay. Anyone else on the left-hand side? No. Okay. We want to go to regular business. Oh, I'm sorry, is anyone on Zoom besides?
No,
us?
it's just John.
Okay.
So for this one, I can go through it, or if there's any specific board questions, I can answer it. I will point out some things that I think the board should be aware of. Do you have a one way or the other? Do you want to go top to bottom, or just me at the highlights?
I think I
Okay. We have the general consent agenda that we have with the accepting of the reports. Department reports from the various boards are going to happen. Under new business, there is that resolution for the public meeting rules of conduct and public comment. It's essentially the same as what we have been using for the past year and a half. The only change which the board needs to be aware of is I've spoken to some of the board members, is changing the Zoom to listen only, and that has a couple benefits and also a couple risks. The benefit would be currently people sit in a waiting room. If other meetings occur where there's not someone watching it like me, they might not be able to get in, they might not be able to actually get into the meetings because they're waiting perpetual waiting room that nobody's seeing or hearing. By having it by listen only, one, we can get rid of that waiting room and people can automatically come and go. They won't need to queue in and wait their turn. Again, the benefit is it's easier to run the meeting. We are still giving an opportunity for public comment for residents. The downside of that is if someone cannot make it, again, they're not going to have the ability to voice their comments there. However, there's many ways to get comments to the Board of Supervisors by sending an email to the Board of Supervisors, speaking to any member before or afterwards, reaching out to the staff. So there's positives and negatives. Obviously, if we have someone that shut down, we had to go remote only, that would obviously change the ability to interact because if we're all going remote, if there was some type of emergency declaration, obviously we would be only able to communicate via Zoom, and that would change the nature of how we communicate. So that's the only material change in that.
If I can make a comment on this, Steve, I think that at this day and age, it is actually important because it's not only our municipality, but throughout the state, throughout the country is actively using this. The burden doesn't have to be on you, Warren, to administer this. We can always have a service that can provide it, and in the event that you're not available, we have backup. So right now, I've got a couple of people are trying to get into this meeting and they can't. You know, the meeting ID was incorrect. So that's something where we, you know, you can't be doing the job as a township manager and administrating the Zoom meeting.
Agreed completely.
24, I made that suggestion and say, you know, it means hiring a student from the high school or someone who has some IT experience or going right through a vendor and reach out to the COG. There's a lot of contacts that can help us on this. So take the burden off yourself there, Warren, and then we'll have a very useful solution here for these meetings. But right now, we have Kevin and Shane are trying to get into the meeting, and we're not able to attend it.
So again, the board can decide whether they want to add or remove that next week. And again, it can be amended any time. The resolution, as we've spoken about, for the real estate tax rate.
I just, the board, could you just weigh in for that for a moment? Do you want to have a good virtual meeting where residents can attend these meetings? Having the difficulties.
I would say deliver.
We've heard complaints from the other committees that they're not prepared to run some of these virtual meetings. Go ahead.
So I've just discouraged deliberation at this meeting, and this is something that you can discuss at the board meeting when it's up for a vote. And again, you can make
Excuse me,
amendments.
Mark, but this is the workshop meeting. That was the purpose of having this meeting, that we do discuss these items so that we're prepared for the business meeting. So the business meeting runs smoothly. We have to allow the deliberation.
I personally would like to think about it. I would like to consider it myself. I don't know that I have an opinion one way or the other right now.
Yeah. So that's what we need to know, because, you know, it's good service, and, you know, when you were sick, you were still able to listen in on the meeting. That's the whole thing. And for some of our committee meetings, we go for month after month without a quorum because people were traveling.
I don't think she's saying getting rid of Zoom, maybe.
No, I'm not talking about getting rid of
Zoom.
Zoom. I'm just saying as participants, citizens joining, it's listen only. Obviously, if board members need to zoom in, they have the ability to have their video on, have their audio on because they're a board member, but just the general citizenship who wish to attend the meeting via Zoom, and again, a lot of municipalities are going to that way because they are struggling with juggling chat, Zoom, questions. But again, it's a board decision.
Yeah, so
There's positives and negatives. It's only for the citizens or anybody who wishes to attend. Board members will obviously be able to have full access to cameras, audio, all of that share screening.
Okay, Jeff, is that what you had understood?
No, I feel that just making it listen only is cutting off the ability for the residents to comment, to participate. Virtual, it's been used for decades now in the corporate market. It's just coming into the public sector. We're lagging behind. You know, people have families that can't drop everything at dinner, but they could listen in during dinner time. And this is a great service for people to communicate with us. So I think that, you know, I do appreciate the effort that Warren put in to get this set up. I'm just saying, let's take it to the proper level and not keep the burden on him to be administrating it, as well as when you're in the other committee meetings where they have to drop what you're doing and fit people in and out. So I don't expect a decision at the moment, but I would like to just leave those options open, and then when we get into our meeting next week, make that decision. So
Well,
that's what
couldn't we just have sort of a hybrid of both those scenarios where if you are at our regular township meetings, then you could allow people in, or whatever the right phrasing is, you could allow people in the room, and then say like a land preservation meeting, if they wanted to Zoom, the person would just not have like a waiting room, so to speak, they would just be able to get in and listen and not make any comments.
Correct. It keeps the camera and the microphone off. Get rid of what I will air quote is Zoom bombing, where anybody can come and start yelling vulgarities or hold up a sign or do whatever. So because they don't have the ability to be disruptive, then there's no need to cue the people coming in. They can literally, meeting starts on its own, everyone can flood in and leave and go as they please.
Well, what I'm saying is I don't think we'd have to make a decision for every meeting. We could sort of, you know, for a township meeting, for instance, a regular board meeting, have it where people can make comments, and then land preservation, they could go in and just listen.
I mean, you can even just put it at again, it's one of these things where we have to set it up within the Zoom platform. So the administrator, which is me, I have the access to, the ability to allow it as it is or make it tighter so there's less disturbances. Not that we've ever seen it, but that is the issue. So
Are people allowed to still type in questions if they are not allowed to make comments, or how does that work?
you can do either. If it's chat, though, you have to have someone like me who has a secondary screen watching it. And again, there's dozens of ways to get public comment. And again, there's benefit and risk to all of this. It's not an easy decision. It's just something that the board can give me direction, or they can decide to make it at the discretion of the chair.
And if we could just add one more comment to that, Scott has been working with us for several years. He has offered some very good input on how to improve the audio of these meetings so that we have good recordings, so that the person is interested in listening to the meeting after it's occurred, they can actually listen to the comments. So I would, I value the comments that he's making, but we need to act on it. And it's not something that we can decide at the moment, but I feel it's an open issue for 2024 and that it should be addressed. I'm done with my comment on that.
Thank you. Resolution 2319, we're going to set the real estate tax limit for 1.35 mils, which it has been for the last few years, so no tax increase. Fee schedule for the services provided to the township is going to remain unchanged with the exception that we now accept credit card payments, and by law, as a government agency, we can charge a convenience fee, essentially the fee that credit card companies cost us to process back onto the applicant using those payments. The Chevy Malibu has finally hit its end of life here, so we're going to seek permission to put that on municipal bid to see if anybody wishes to bid on that vehicle. Honeybrook Elderson, we've applied for a Pennsylvania State grant on their behalf towards a ambulance that would be for 2026. They are not permitted as a non-municipality to apply for it, so it is receiving a resolution to allow us to apply on their behalf. We had previously allowed, authorized by resolution, the Chester County Tax Collection Agency through the Treasurer's Office to collect their taxes, which they've been doing. They got back to us in our agreement said 1 year. They actually require a 2-year agreement, so the resolutions is coming back amending 1 to 2 years. And then just some releases for various stages at Chestnut Bridge, project on Beaver Dam, Honeybrook Estates, and Sweetwater Woodworks. And again, Mike will be here to go over any of them. And as I said, I always encourage the board members to reach out either to the engineering firm, or if you have a question about something that's, well, I guess I skipped over the big thing, is the agricultural security area. We're going to have a hearing on that. We have to update that for 7 years. We've been talking about that all year, so that will be holding a hearing. And there's some additions and removals which the board has access to. So that's summing up the business meeting for next week, unless Christie caught something that I missed. So we have to answer any questions about that.
I have a question on the tax security resolution. So in the past, it's been over 7 years. We have yet to do it in this fashion. So the purpose of having a public hearing, is that required? Or is that something that township missed 7 years ago?
So the township can elect to do nothing every 7 years, and then the ASA just is deemed approved without additions and removals, correct?
Correct, and the problem with that is that people forget what the ASA is,
Right.
which is what we found out 7 years ago, because it had been 14 years since we re-upped it.
So to answer your question, John, we don't have to do it. However, to have the hearing, it kind of like Christie noted, reestablishes what that program is. It the municipality to add people and remove based upon the standards that we have.
So, from an administrative standpoint, are we notifying the farms that are currently in the program?
Everybody
Is that
got,
sent out?
yes, everybody in the ASA, everybody being added and everybody being removed received notices.
So just for, to understand the process, say we have 100 farms and 80 farms are in the program. The additional 20, are they notified that they're eligible to be in the program? How does that work?
No,
No, they typically speak
this is a
about,
reauthorization of the current. So the only people being notified, sent notice of the hearing and of exactly who's being added and being removed is sent to the people in, sent to the people who are going out, and sent to the people who requested to be added. Who
I
qualified.
understand it's voluntary, and there's advocates for the farmer to participate in it. So, could it be that they're not aware of it, or, you know?
It's possible.
We don't get complaints, and we don't get complaints about it, right?
and people can get added at any point.
Yes.
Also, John Goodall from the Brandywine Conservancy does typically make that a part of his farmer's breakfast speech. So it's not like if someone does not get in at the hearing that they cannot. Typically, we just don't remove people remove parcels until that 7-year renewal, but people can request to have the parcels added at any time.
So, it's not that I'm disagreeing with, I'm just trying to understand why we're having a hearing if we have the opportunity to add them at any given time.
Because the ASA indicates that every 7 years the township can look at it and should have a hearing, but it says should, we don't have to.
Yeah.
So it's just best practice.
All right, so we're establishing a new process, that's all. That's what I wanted to hear.
And that was me, that I opened Pandora's box on this one because I added 7 to 2016 and came up with 2023, so.
That's good, that.
It's all my fault.
Okay, we'll follow up on that.
And for anybody in the audience who doesn't know what ASA is, it's agricultural security area.
Correct.
So if you're a farmer, you're allowed to burn your farm waste or whatever without having a zoning violation because
You're allowed to run your tractor.
yeah, your
Or
tractor's gonna be extra noisy, you're allowed to make farming noises and do farming things without having a problem. That's all that means.
Correct. And the government can't take your land if you're actively using it for agriculture.
Okay.
So that's all, unless there's any further questions from the board members. Again, I always encourage you to reach out during the week prior to the meeting and discuss it with the required person that you have concerns with.
It's just for point of clarification, based on the questions we received tonight on the budget, what will we be seeing on the website tomorrow and go forward?
So they're going to print out the full budget that the board has a copy of. That is the full line-by-line item for all of the separate funds, which is going to be general, fire, land preservation, EMS, capital reserve, and rec funds. So those will be all posted onto the website. And then for 2025, so that'll be 2024's budget, we're going to start the framework for a performance-based budget. And again, if the board next year wishes to start putting up that data as we're working through it, we can always put up a proposed budget. But as I've said, starting in September, we're working with that prior month's year to date, and I wouldn't rely on 60% accuracy. So just understand that the earlier we started, the more those numbers will change as we get closer to the end of the year. And you'll see the November numbers, the board has those projected year ends. For 2023, again, it's showing that we're going to have a net revenue, just in the general fund, even with all the expenditures, of $147,000, if everything goes according to plan, with additional surplus. And just for the board to understand, we were projecting a $481,000 $628,000 surplus.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, we did well on our affiliate funds with the interest, right?
Correct. We, at the end of November, were over $350,000 in interest. And it looks like rates are only going to increase. So, and that's free money. That did not come from taxpayers.
Right, so I brought this up a few months ago about the debt service and the advice we got from the treasurer. He said we should be putting money into projects and stuff, but wouldn't it be helpful if we to consider reducing our debt, payment on the building, and such that in case we do run into some difficult years ahead?
So the treasurer always says, so right now we're making between 5 and 6%. I believe our debt payment is around 2%. So
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about.
the
this.
treasurer always
They
encourages.
did talk about it, but since we had such a good result on those earnings, that's why I'm just bringing it up again. It never hurts to reduce your debt.
Correct, but that would also reduce our rates if we paid off our debt. So we're much better off making 6% than paying off 2%.
Yeah, I mean, that's straightforward now.
Okay, so at some time, we like to lighten our debt load, that's all. But I understand the rationale that you presented.
That's all I have for the next week's meeting.
Okay.
I think you just have. Any other matter of the form, I believe? that's
Yeah,
the-
any other matter, open forum? So this would be open forum about anything.
Yes.
This side of the room, open forum about anything anyone would like to make a comment, anything? This side? Okay.
Yeah, I just want to say, I do not support having the audio or Zoom on listen only. I think that's suppressing residents' comments. And as John said, there are a number of residents who can't make it here in person. I mean, it's hard enough to get people to come to these meetings. I don't think we want to discourage residents from asking questions just because they couldn't attend in person. So I don't really see a justifiable reason to mute everyone and not allow them to speak.
Is that your feeling for every single meeting or just the supervisor?
For all meetings, yes. I've never been to one where I felt like, residents that were on Zoom were disruptive. If someone was inadvertently had their speaker on and, they were shuffling papers or talking or whatever, Warren usually silenced them and the issue went away.
And I just want to maybe reaffirm that I'm not saying anybody that has been disruptive. It's just that a lot of times if a meeting has started in like planning, nobody has a laptop with a Zoom application, they have to hear the audio and get up and go let them in. And I just don't want anybody to have that ability to miss that opportunity because they didn't hear them. I'm not alleging that anybody's ever been disruptive in a township meeting.
Yeah, I just think the risk of having residents not be able to speak is far greater than having the possibility of somebody not being able to come in, so.
And just one other question on the website. So when we do experience problems, I mean, are we directing those questions to Christie or to info@Huntingburg Township? What would be the best response?
You can send it into info, that comes to all three of us in the office, and whoever can address it fastest and best will do so.
I don't recall, I saw that on the new website. Is it posted?
Yes,
Okay.
it should be under the staff. There's like a hyperlink.
Good.
It's also on the main page at the very bottom. It's a clickable hyperlink under our address.
Still getting used to the new one.
Yeah. So you can get it right from the main site.
Okay, we had some more questions here. Are you satisfied, John?
I just raise one last point on that. We know that we've had some people ask questions on the website, just want to make sure they know how to get the help they need when they need it.
I'm saying physically here, there's more questions.
Oh, there are more questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, Karen?
They just, wanted to say, as well as Val, I agree with Val, my hours change, I can't always get here at 7 o'clock on the dot. I tried to zoom in fact, I tried to zoom in today, and it kept backing me out saying that it had the wrong ID number. So I could not listen and Zoom as I'm traveling from work to get here. I think the comments that people make can be useful, that maybe somebody else is thinking the same thing but didn't feel like getting up and saying it. And I think, and I don't know if it is, but, is that a violation of your, freedom of speech? Shouldn't we have a right to say, even though it's through Zoom, and I really personally don't want to talk, nothing against you guys, but I don't want to talk person to person without it being recorded or heard, because I've been in too many conversations where it's, she said, she said, she said, he said. I don't want that. With Scott videotaping this, he gets everybody that talks on Zoom, and I think it would be very, very good doing it the way it is. I mean, if you have somebody getting an answer, something, block them. You can always do that. And I have one more question, Warren. When you said this year, are you talking about 2023 or are you talking about 2024?
Which this year?
You kept saying this year, no raise taxes.
So for 2024, the resolution is not to raise tax for next year. So it's going to be the same rate as it was this year, and also which was
No,
the same.
it's,
Yes.
you said this year.
My apologies, yeah, they're passing the resolution. So we passed the budget and the resolution for taxes this year for next year. So yes, I'm sorry.
That-
For
I just wanted to make
2024,
that clear.
Nope, I apologize for not being clear.
Okay.
Anybody else on this side? Have any questions, anything else?